Hello, welcome to today. Bonjour. So, in today's lesson, I'm going to make a, a video on how to make a language lesson more interesting and fun for your learners. So, I'm going to give tips for language lessons. The first step to making a language lesson interesting and fun for your learners is the planning. So the key to a successful language lesson is planning. You need to have to divide your lesson into section, have a starter activity, and the starter activity should be an activity that captures the learner's attention, that motivates the learner, that makes them look forward to what is coming in the lesson. And then we have the main activity. Main activity can be, maybe you can have two main activity. The first one where you have maybe the teacher's presentation, and the teacher's presentation should not be so long that the learners are not engaged. Your lesson should be learner centered at all times. And towards the end, you should have a plenary activity. The plenary activity is just to summarize what the learners have learned throughout the lesson. So make sure that your activities are learner centered. You can incorporate group work. You can use technology. There are lots of things we can do to make our lessons learner centered and even more motivating. The next step to making a lesson more interesting is the classroom environment. The classroom environment should not be of that of somebody who's way above the learners. You need to bring yourself as a teacher to the level of learners and engage them in a positive, inclusive learning environment. Make sure that your learning environment meets all the needs of the learners in your classroom. We know that we have different group of learners. Some are high achievers, some are slow learners. Make sure that your learning environment is inclusive and that everybody is engaged at whatever level in the classroom. The other way of making a language lesson more interesting is incorporating different language games in your lesson. So there are lots of games that you can have in your lesson. You can have hangman, where learners are trying to figure out how to spell different vocabulary, different words. You can have memory games. Maybe you can have picture and words, and learners are trying to turn the cards to find matching words and matching pictures. You can have a bomb game. The bomb game is whereby the learners play around with vocabulary, and when the bomb goes off, then the person who is saying that vocabulary is out of the game. You can have A to Z games. You can have treasure hunts, where they're trying to find different words, or they're trying to do different language activities. It could be grammar, it could be anything. You can also have notes and crosses, and these types of activity really captures the learner's attention. Another interesting activity that you can have in your lesson is music. Music in the target language. If, for example, you're teaching French, you can have French music, and the learners are trying to identify different vocabulary in French from the music. They could try to identify different grammar elements, for example, the future tense, the present tense, from the different type of music. The learners could also identify different grammar elements. Maybe you could have conjunctions and so forth. The next a way of capturing the learner's attention during a grammar lesson or during a language lesson is by incorporating short clips of different movies in the target language. For example, you could have a kid-friendly or a child-friendly movie where the learners can watch maybe for up to 3 to 5 minutes, and they can try to identify different elements. For example, if you're learning about transport, and you, for example, if I'm learning about transport and I have a movie of Mr. Bean's visit to France, and is using different modes of transport, so I could show a clip of it, and the learners can try to identify the different modes of transport in French and even write them down. So this keeps the learners more motivated and engaged throughout the lesson. Another way of capturing the learner's attention during a language lesson is incorporating technology and tasks that learners can use, and they can compete with each other. For example, Kahoot, you can create a end of unit test on Kahoot. Learners can work in groups, or they can compete individually. The downside of this is that it creates a sense of competitiveness, but the upside of it is that learners are more engaged and they want to do this so often. We have some sites that have language games. Now, when I talk about this, mostly I'm talking about maybe if you're teaching French, Spanish, whichever the language that you're teaching. We have Word Wall. Word Wall has different language games that the learners can play and practice the different elements of languages that they have learned. We have it's a bit new in the market. We have Blocket, which has the same concept as Kahoot, and it has so many games that the learners can play and revise the different grammar concepts that they have learned. Another way of making language lessons more interesting and fun for the learners is role play. It is said that every learner comes to the language lesson with an aim of speaking the language. The word language has been spelled there, don't mind. So every learner comes to the language lesson with an aim of speaking the language. So there's no need of learning German if you can't speak it during the language lesson, and there's no need of coming to the French lesson and just maybe theoretically learn it without practicing the language. So every learner comes to the language lesson with an aim of speaking the target language. So role play allows the learners to speak the language. They could do role play, for example, in a restaurant, role play at a bus station whereby they are buying tickets, and one person is selling the ticket and the other one is buying. And this gives them the room to practice different phrases in the target language and to also learn and revise the vocabulary that they have learned. Thank you for watching. Please remember to subscribe.